Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Alpharetta City Council meeting and public hearing for December 16th, 2024. We appreciate you all making time to join us for the final scheduled City Council meeting of 2024. Go ahead and call this meeting to order. As I do, I want to announce that there are following items that have been deferred by staff to January 27th, and that is CLUP-24-05/Z-24-17/PH-24-20 Mayfair on Haynes Bridge. There's also an announcement that the following item has also been deferred until February 24th of next year, 2025. And that is PH-24-16, road abandonment for Manning Street, and Z-24-09/E-24-03/V-24-14, Wells Fargo redevelopment, 21 North Main Street. So if any of you came for those items, you'll have to rejoin us in a few weeks. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and call roll. We do have all members of council present and accounted for this evening.
Mr. Mayor, before you go any further into the pledge, could I just also ask that as you're making those announcements that we remove new business item B from the agenda, which is the resolution and contract approval North Point Parkway right-of-way acquisition? That didn't make your script. That just needs to be removed from the agenda.
That was item D on the consent
B,
agenda?
like Bravo, new business B.
Oh, under new business, okay. I had not gotten that far on my agenda. Duly noted.
Thank you.
But as we always do, we begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're willing and able, please stand and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the first item up on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of the items City Council meeting minutes for the meeting of December 2nd, 2024, the financial management report for the month ending October 31st, 2024, the conflict waiver, Gerard and Davis, LLP, for North Fulton SWAT Team Memorandum of Understanding, and ratification of consent order and final judgment, parcel 66A of McManus Ferry Road widening project. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening? Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on the consent agenda?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, now's your chance to come forward. If you'd like to come forward and speak on the consent agenda, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I have a motion by Councilman Mitchell, second by Councilman Brady. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please vote yes accordingly. And the consent agenda does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. As we mentioned earlier, the first item on the printed agenda, if you're looking at that, the CLUP 24-05/Z-24-17/PH-24-20 Mayfair on Haynes Bridge has been deferred, will not be heard this evening. The same holds true for item B on the consent agenda, on the public hearing item that was earlier discussed has been deferred until February 24th, and item C has also been deferred until February 24th. So we'll move on to the announcement of public hearing procedures, as our city attorney, Ms. Eswine, will cover.
An individual requesting to be heard on a matter related to the purpose of the hearing must be recognized by the mayor before addressing the city council. Upon rising to speak, the speaker must identify himself or herself and furnish a home or business address before proceeding with any comments or remarks. The council will allow proponents a total of 10 minutes to speak in support of an application. Opponents will be allowed 10 minutes to speak in opposition. Comments are accepted first from the applicant, followed by persons speaking in favor, and then from those in opposition. Upon conclusion of any opposing comments or presentations, the mayor will allow the applicant to offer rebuttal if any time is remaining in the original allotted 10 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Eswine. That being said, if everyone's clear on the procedures, we'll move forward with item Z-24-15. This is McManus, 350 Brady Place. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor on this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item before you this evening is a request for rezoning to allow an existing structure to be used for a single-family residence or for an office in the future. Property is 0.13 acres, and it's located in the downtown overlay. The structure was most recently occupied by Blooming Bouquets Florist. Property owner would like to convert the structure into her primary residence. To do that, she's requesting a rezoning from O&I Office Institutional to DTMU Downtown Mixed Use. And I have the location map on the overhead. This property is located at 350 Brady Place. Property is developed with a one-story, 1,100 square foot structure. And the comprehensive land use designation of the property is mixed use, which does support the proposed zoning, rezoning, and uses. This is street view of the structure on the property. This is from Brady Place. Property is right at the corner of Brady Place and Maxwell, and this is a view of the structure from Maxwell Road. Property is located in the South Main Street Livable Centers Initiative, LCI. Brady Place was designated in the LCI as a cottage commercial district. The vision for that area is to build on the existing market condition, adding compatible infill structures that resemble detached homes and used for commercial and residential use. This is the applicant's site plan. And according to the application, the applicant is looking to, as I mentioned, convert the structure to a residence, which would include interior renovations of the existing structure, a new metal roof, painting of the exterior, and a complete landscape design. The applicant intends to remove the existing parking lot on the site, as well as close off the curb cut from Maxwell Road in order to stop cut-through traffic through the property. And the applicant is not proposing any additions to the building at this time and does not propose any tree removal. Considering the review criteria for rezoning, the request is consistent with the future land use designation of the property. The applicant's desire to save and reuse the existing structure is consistent with the vision for the area in that South Main Street LCI. Would not adversely affect the natural environment. There's no impacts to trees on the property. And the request would not cause any excessive burden on public facilities and services. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report indicating that she received one email in support. And then this item was also shown to the public at the November 13th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were no public comments at that meeting. Planning Commission considered the applicant's request at their December 5th meeting. There were no public comments at that meeting. And ultimately, Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval of the applicant's request, subject to the 6 conditions in the report in your packets. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Woodman at this point? Thank you, Mr. Woodman.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
So I I'm assuming that I need to give my name and address. Is that correct? So I'm Christina McManus, and my address is 6606 Webb Bridge Court, Alpharetta, 30009. So as Michael mentioned, I'm requesting to change the zoning from office industrial to downtown mixed use. And a little bit of the background is my husband and I purchased this property in 2002. And we used it for an office for 10 years and went on to other adventures, rented it after that, but always thought that, wow, look at Alpharetta. I mean, it's walkable, it's bike rideable, it's pedestrian friendly, it is family oriented. It has all the things that we would want to have it as a personal residence. And obviously it was a personal residence in 1950 when it was originally built. So when we read about the LCI, the South Main Arts District LCI study, we were like, fantastic, this is incredible. The city of Alpharetta also agrees with what our desires would be. So I just want to say that I'm excited to be a catalyst, I would say, for the renaissance of that area, and super excited about the possibility of having it as my personal residence.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us at this time?
Any questions?
Well, the way we keep our time now is we have 10 minutes for people to advocate for your application, which you're doing now. If you're finished with your comments, then I'll ask for the public if there's anyone else who is in support of your application. And if no one comes forward, then we'll go to the question part.
Okay, great. Thank you
We good?
very much.
Okay? Thank you. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards in favor of this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
However, if there's anyone else here who would support this item, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment in support of the item. Does anyone on council have a question for the applicant? That being said, is there anyone who would like to come and oppose this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd offer a motion this evening to approve Z-24-15 McManus/350 Brady Place as presented this evening.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, second by Councilman Brady. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for everyone to vote. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations and good luck. So the next item up on the agenda, public hearing, will be PH-24-23/Z-24-18 Wexler, 172 and 182 Marietta Street. Mr. Woodman, once again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item before you is a request for changes to conditions of zoning as well as a rezoning to allow for the construction of a detached garage with accessory dwelling unit on 0.58 acres in the downtown. The applicant is constructing a detached home on the property at 182 Marietta Street. That rezoning was approved in 2022, and they intend to combine the property with 172 Marietta Street. A change of condition is requested at 182 Marietta Street, and a rezoning is requested from C2 General Commercial to DTR Downtown Residential at 172 Marietta Street. Now, I have the location map on the overhead. The properties are at 172 and 182 Marietta Street on the south side of Marietta Street. Both properties are currently were developed with detached homes converted to commercial uses. And the comprehensive land use plan designation of the properties is mixed use, which does support the applicant's request to rezone 172 Marietta Street. At 182 Marietta Street, let me just go back to the location map real quick. So this is 182 Marietta Street here, the western lot. This is where the applicant is proposing to build their primary residence, and they have recently required 172 Marietta Street, which is where they would like to construct a detached garage with accessory dwelling unit. And the intent is to combine both lots should they be approved to rezone 172 Marietta Street and use the lots as one property. In order to use the property as one, they are requesting a change of condition of zoning related to the rezoning of 182 Marietta Street. There was a condition number 6, which required a 10-foot planted buffer along the east, south, and west property lines. If the properties are combined and used as one, that 10-foot buffer would need to be moved over to the east side of 172 Marietta Street. So they need to change that condition number 6 to delete the word east. So this is a concept plan for 172. Again, they're building the primary residence at 182, which is off the property over to the west side. 172 has an existing one-story structure on it. They're proposing to place the two-story detached garage at about the same setback as the existing structure at 172. And then the driveway would only be on 182 and would connect over to the detached garage. So you would not have multiple curb cuts. You would have one curb cut serving both properties. The applicant proposes a two-story detached garage. This is a 3-car garage with dwelling unit above. This is a side view of the garage. Let me step back one second. This is the elevation of the garage that you would see from Marietta Street. So this is the elevation facing Marietta Street. This is the elevation of the garage. This is the side of the garage which would face the primary residence at 182 Marietta Street. So the garage doors would not face Marietta Street. And then this shows you the applicant's primary residence with the detached garage beside it. As it relates to the trees at 172 Marietta Street, there are very few trees existing on that property that are in good condition. The city arborist did go out to the site and recommended that the applicant save a boundary tree, tree number 6, which was a 14-inch water oak, which the applicant has agreed to do. Looking at the review criteria for the rezoning of 172 Marietta Street, we find that the request is consistent with the future land use designation of the property. Proposal would not adversely affect the natural environment and would not cause excessive burden on public facilities and services. If approved, the property would be combined with 182 Marietta Street, which was rezoned to DTR in 2022. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report indicating that they had received positive feedback as a result of their outreach, and they provided 4 letters of support to their request. They also showed their request to the public at the November 13th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were 2 public comments in support of the request. And then Planning Commission considered the request at their December 5th meeting. There were no public comments at that meeting. And Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval of the applicant's request, subject to the 9 conditions in the staff report in your packets, and also changing condition number 6 related to file number Z22-01/B2203 Wexler 182 Marietta Street, and deleting the 10-foot planted buffer along the east property line of 182 Marietta Street. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for Mr. Woodman? Well done.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward at this time? Don't forget your name and address. For public record.
Andrew and Courtney Wexler. Andrew and Courtney Wexler, 12051 Orchid Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009. And we're just excited with the opportunity. We've finally broken ground on 182. The neighboring house, which is a commercial building currently, the owner of it decided they needed to sell it because they were pursuing another property. So it was fortunate that we were able to acquire the property, but we think that it will continue the transition of Marietta Street to more of a residential street, which is good for downtown, good for the green space, less traffic on the road. And I think, as you saw on the, as it's laid out, we'll be improving the amount of both green space as well as less, I'm trying to think of the word, from a water flow. We'll be investing significantly in the drainage and the water flow on that land to improve it. So we're excited about the opportunity.
You still have 8 minutes and 53 seconds if you'd like to say anything else. Otherwise, we'll allow anyone else to speak.
I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any other advocates for this project?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone else would like to come forward and speak on behalf of this project, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards opposing this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to speak against this application, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, do we have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd offer a motion to approve PH-24-23/Z-24-18 Wexler /172 and 182 Marietta Street as presented this evening.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Dorito. Any discussion, gentlemen? I do support this. I think it's a great move to remain a little more residential through that corridor. It's got a good bit of mix in commercial, but I think this is an improvement, so I'll support your item. That being said, all those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations and good luck. So the next item up under public hearing is Z-24-16/V-24-25, Hampton Hall, South Vine Homes. Mr. Woodman, once again, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. The next request is a request for rezoning and variance to allow 9 single-family detached homes on 5 acres. Proposed density is 1.78 dwelling units per acre. Applicant requests a rezoning from AG Agriculture to R15, and variances are requested to reduce lot width and reduce building setbacks. This is the location, the property, a location map. The property is located at 0 Blake Road in the Hampton Hall subdivision. The comprehensive land use plan designation of the property is low-density residential, which supports the proposed rezoning to R15. We looked at the surrounding area, which is predominantly zoned CUP, Community Unit Plan. Minimum lot sizes in the area range between 12,000 to 16,000 square feet. Minimum lot widths range between 80 to 94 feet. And the reason why, typically in an R15 zoning, you would have a 100-foot lot width, but the surrounding subdivisions, many of the surrounding subdivisions were developed and or approved in unincorporated Fulton County, which is why many of them carry the CUP zoning instead of the R15 zoning, except for the last two phases that were approved in Hampton Hall. Phase 6 and 7 were rezoned to R15, which is consistent with the request before you this evening. As I mentioned, the applicant requests some variances to reduce the minimum lot width from 100 to 80 feet, also asking to reduce the front setback from 35 feet to 30 feet, so a five-foot reduction, and also asking to reduce the side setback from 10 feet to 5 feet, but with 20 feet between foundations. We did, again, look at surrounding subdivisions as well as phases in Hampton Hall, and these variances are consistent with the development regulations approved in Hampton Hall and other surrounding subdivisions. In addition to the variance request, the applicant is offering to increase the rear setback, which would be 25 feet in the R15 zoning district, and increase that to 40 feet. And that would be to allow for a 40-foot landscape buffer around the perimeter of the property. Before we get to the site plan, I just want to show you that. So this is Exhibit A. This is referenced an exhibit that the applicant provided and referenced in the conditions. And so along the east, south, and west property lines, there would be a 40-foot buffer provided by the applicant. This is the applicant's site plan for the property, depicting 9 single-family lots oriented to a new cul-de-sac road off of High Hampton Chase in the Hampton Hall subdivision. The lots in this new development range from about 15,000 square feet to a little over 26,000 square feet, with an average lot size of almost 18,400 square feet. So well above the minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet required in the R15 zoning. Property consists of hardwoods. The applicant submitted a tree survey and assessment identifying 6 specimen trees on the property. And the site plan depicts 19 tree saves, of which 3 specimen trees are included. The stormwater pond is shown here on its own parcel in the southwest corner of the development. It's about a 0.7 acre parcel. There are 2 walls shown on the west and south side of that pond. There is some pretty significant topography on this property. It's sloping down from High Hampton Chase as it moves south through the property. The applicant does show their stormwater strategy for discharge outfall of the stormwater facility. They're showing an underground pipe leading to the southeast corner of the property and discharging to, there's a stream in this location here. So they are bringing that water from the stormwater pond to the stream. Currently, the water on this property just flows off the property from north to south. The applicant did provide 6 different home elevations, renderings. They are depicting 2-story homes in a traditional style, brick and stone exteriors. Ultimately, I've had some communication with the Hampton Hall HOA. While they believe that the applicant did make attempts with the renderings to look similar to the style, size, massing of homes in Hampton Hall, The HOA is requesting and has discussed this with the applicant. They would like these elevations or renderings to be updated a little bit more. So you will notice that I believe it's condition number 2. Yes, condition number 2 that typically ties the renderings to these renderings submitted by the applicant. You'll notice that condition does not tie them directly back to these elevations, but says that the home shall be of similar size, massing, and style to Hampton Hall homes and limited to 2 stories above grade with elevations approved by staff. Again, these are just the renderings that the applicant submit. Again, the applicant continues to work with the Hampton Hall HOA to update these renderings. Of course, we looked at the review criteria for rezoning and variance. We believe that the proposal is suitable as it relates to the use and development of adjacent and nearby properties. They are developed similarly to the applicant's proposal. Future land use designation supports the requested rezoning. And as I mentioned, the last 2 phases within Hampton Hall have been rezoned to R15. Also noted that area schools have available capacity to serve students generated by the proposal, and there are recreational opportunities available within a quarter mile of this property. The variance criteria, we believe the property does have extraordinary and exceptional conditions due to its topography. Minimum lot width and building setbacks that the applicant proposes are consistent with development regulations in Hampton Hall and other surrounding subdivisions. And the applicant has offered to increase the rear setback and provide that 40-foot landscape buffer to the east, west, and south to buffer impacts to surrounding properties. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report indicating that they've maintained regular contact with the Hampton Hall HOA. The HOA did let me know, as well as the applicant, that they approved the annexation of the proposed development into the Hampton Hall HOA. The applicant also showed this request to the public at the November 13th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were residents that signed in with comments regarding stormwater runoff and requests that there be no open cut in the street for a sewer tie-in. And I believe that you also received an email from one of those same residents that showed up at the CZIM requesting 3 conditions to address his concerns. I believe that resident is located here just south of the proposed stormwater pond. And we have added a number of conditions related to stormwater. These conditions are consistent with the stormwater conditions that were added to phases 6 and 7 that were developed in Hampton Hall. This item was considered by Planning Commission at their December 5th meeting. There were 2 public comments at that meeting with concerns over stormwater runoff. Those 2 public comments were from residents in the subdivision to the south. And Planning Commission ultimately recommended unanimous approval of the applicant's request, subject to the 21 conditions in your staff report, in your packets. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councilman Hypes, I believe you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Woodman, for the presentation. If I missed this in the packet, I just apologize. I'm looking at the renderings. Is that a 2-car garage?
So
And if
the
you
garage is actually,
or if you touched on this and I missed it, I apologize.
I didn't touch on it. I'm glad that you brought up the question because I didn't touch on this at Planning Commission and had intended to do that tonight, but thank you for bringing it up. So the 2-car, it's actually 3 cars. So this is a one-car garage here that faces the street, and then this is a two-car garage right here. So there, you'd have 2 cars that would pull into the side. So there's 2 that are side-loaded and 1 that's front-loaded.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Will.
Michael, for clarity, is this part of Hampton Hall subdivision now?
It is located within Hampton Hall, but it is not part of their HOA. It's just an undeveloped parcel that has not been developed.
So I thought you said that they had agreed to become part of the Hampton Hall HOA.
Yes, so with the applicant's request to rezone this property, they have been negotiating terms with Hampton Hall HOA. The applicant is here and should be able to address more details of that, but they have had ongoing conversations with the HOA, I believe, for a couple of years. They've been
So
talking about
it's
developing.
not part of Hampton Hall, but it potentially is part of the HOA for Hampton Hall?
Yes, so the idea is that the HOA and members within the Hampton Hall HOA they voted to annex this in should the council approve their request to rezone this. And they would have to continue through with finalizing all the agreements that they have with Hampton Hall
And that
HOA
goes-
to become part of that HOA.
And that
They're
goes
not
back-
now, but will be.
That goes back to condition 21, which says no more than 10% rentals, but there's 9 properties. That would mean 0 rentals. Or does getting annexed, they're going to be Hampton Hall?
Yes.
So that would just flow into the Hampton Hall thing, so that condition 21 isn't really relevant then. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Woodman? Well done, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your thoroughness. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Mayor Gilman, members of the City Council, I'm Don Rollator. My address is 200 Foothills Parkway,
Mr. Rollator.
Marble Hill, Georgia. Sorry. How's that? Better? I'm still Don Rollator, and 200 Foothills Parkway, Marble Hill, Georgia, here tonight on behalf of the applicant, South Vine Homes. Before I make my short presentation, let me just clarify 2 points for you. Same question you had, it's a 3-car garage. Mr. Aiken was fascinated by it at the Planning Commission, scratched his head and goes, 1-car garage? No, it's 3. It's the way it's laid out with 2 from the side entry. The other point is that it will become a part and parcel of Hampton Hall subdivision upon this approval. All the details are worked out between the HOA and the developer. I expect one of the HOA representatives will speak tonight. Simply stated, it's 5 acres. That's just a forest right in the middle of Hampton Hall subdivision. It's been there forever. There's not been any development on it in the past that we can determine. We're seeking to build 9 single-family homes. We met early on with staff and said, let's get this right. What do we do? And they say, we would much prefer a larger rear setback, 40 feet as opposed to 25 feet, to give the surrounding neighbors a little more buffer. And if you'll do that, these variances you need on the side setbacks and the front setback, we're happy to work out with you. So I would report to you at this time that all 21 conditions contained in the staff report are agreed to by the applicant with the staff and approved by the Planning Commission. The overall intent is to create a new phase of Hampton Hall subdivision. The request from the applicant is that you approve this application and the variances that accompany it. And I'm going to have Mr. Tedderton address for you 2 things. He will address briefly the stormwater issue, and he will address the architectural renderings. So Alex, if you're ready, I'll ask you to come up just to give you a baseline. Presently, the property owner to the southwest of this property gets a lot of water, and it goes across his lot, and it goes down the street in front of his house. Nothing this property did to do it, but some way when his subdivision got laid out, it wasn't properly accounted for, and he's presently suffering. Alex will talk to you about the things that we will do with our detention pond and our stormwater efforts that will relieve a great deal of his problem. So at this point in time, let me turn it over to Alex Tedderton.
Mayor, Councilman, my name's Alex Tedderton. I'm the owner of South Vine Homes. First, I'd like to address the elevations and the floor plans. So during our planning commission meeting, I was told that our elevations weren't exactly the way that the HOA board wanted. So we went back to our architects along with some of the pictures the HOA provided for us, and we've updated those. We had a meeting today at my office with the architectural review committee. We went through them. We think we're at a point now where we're good enough to take them to full construction drawings and submit them at the proper time once we're at that time, as well as I went ahead and brought some marketing layouts so that you guys could see the garages so it'd make a little more sense. So if okay by you, I'll put them on the screen for everybody to see. This is one of our plans. Is that going up there? That we have modified to be a little more in keeping. We added a few more columns and a couple more shutters that were more in line with what the HOA was requesting. The additional elevations for this plan now look like this, and we've added more stone massing in different locations, and this stone here will continue all the way across, and we've agreed to do that. In regards to our garages, this is the way that they will look. This is a primary bedroom on the main. The front area, as Michael indicated, this is a two-car garage with a single-car garage here, which creates a motor court for 3 cars to be inside the home. The upstairs has additional 4 bedrooms and a loft overlooking the family room, and most of our plans will be in this configuration. So I just wanted to give that visual to everybody here so they could see the garages and the layout of the home. Sorry. In regards to stormwater, what we've agreed to, both with the city and the HOA, is we're providing some undisturbed buffer on the east and west side of the property. And the way the water currently is flowing, it's from north to south and it fingers out some. Where we've located our detention pond, in our mind and just in logic, is immensely going to help the folks below us. And that water will be captured, it'll be brought underground and out to the southeast corner of our property, going underground through the Voorhees property, who live behind us, and we've secured a drainage easement through them, and it'll dissipate into the same stream that it was already going to. We're just rerouting it in a, I shouldn't say cleaner, but just a more efficient way underground so that everybody who's below us is not getting all of that same water. The only water they'll be receiving is the same exact water just in those buffer areas, but the mainstay of all of that water will be redirected away from them. I hope that makes sense. Sorry. All right. Thank you.
Closing point on stormwater, I talked with Michael Woodman this afternoon, and he has discussed the proposed conditions by the abutting property owner for the stormwater, and I understand, Michael can confirm it, that Jill said that our present stormwater ordinance, together with the conditions we've agreed to, will handle his problem without the necessity of any further conditions. So with that, we'll close our presentation, reserve time for rebuttal, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them at this time.
I have to give an opportunity for anyone else to advocate on behalf of your project. So,
thank you.
We do have a public comment card. First for the project is Alex Tedderton, I think that was you. Okay, got it. Thank you, sir. And then the other in support is Frank Schwing, if you'd like to come forward.
You have 2 minutes and 48 seconds left, so be thoughtful about allowing
I'll see
time
if I can
for the
leave, I'll see
second.
if I can leave you 48 seconds. I'm Frank.
There's somebody else that wants to speak, so I'm just saying you might
Gotcha.
want to leave.
I understand. I'm Frank Schwing, 8390 High Hampton Chase in Alpharetta. I'm the president of the Hampton Hall Community Association. And I just wanted to very briefly speak in favor. As you've heard, we have an annexation agreement with South Vine. We conducted a vote as required by our governing documents, and the vote result was 124 in favor and 5 opposed. So the neighborhood is, in general, strongly in favor of this project. The annexation agreement gives us, among other things, approval over the site plan, elevation of materials, and landscaping. I've spoken with Mr. Woodman as well, as he mentioned. We've reviewed the conditions that are in front of you today, and we support those conditions. We did have a very productive meeting with Mr. Tedderton and his staff today, and I think made good progress on the elevations to the point that the next step for him is to put together the final engineering drawings, 4-sided elevations. And some of you may understand why, but we're going to go through a very DRB-like process in reviewing these, and we've had a very good working relationship so far. So I have no reason to believe that we won't continue to do this productively. And because of those conditions we have in the agreement, we're very comfortable with this moving forward. That's the end of my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Shapiro?
We do not have any more public comment cards in favor of this item. We do have one in opposition.
Okay. Did we not have someone else that wanted to advocate, though?
That has not filled out a card. I only have
Okay.
one card remaining for opposition.
I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood you. May have been talking about the opposite. However, if there's anyone else that wants to come forward and speak on behalf of this project, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Do we have, I assume we do. You mentioned that we have a public comment card for someone who opposes the project.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If Akarim Thar would come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Al-Karim Thawar, and I reside at 170 Starboard Way. I've been there for the last 26 years since Waters Landing came into existence. I believe it's nice to keep a face to a name because I emailed a bunch of papers to the entire board a few days ago regarding some of the concerns I have. So just wanted to give you some picture and then we can go forward. Is, as you see, this is where 170 Starboard is. This is where we live. A few years ago, about 6 years ago, Black Road, there was a subdivision built, part of Hampton Hall. And this is the new development that Alex and his team will be doing. And I'm right here, right? So when Black Road was constructed, you can see all the water was coming on 170. And the amount of water, and I'll just give you a few, was significant, where not only it passed through my backyard, but it was going all the way to the cul-de-sac. 4 or 5 inches of water at all times when it rained was behind my home, right? And you can see how much water was going all the way in the streets. This is everything that was going in the street coming from my backyard, right? And I mean, there is all this documentation has been given to the committee, the council members and the mayor to say, this is what is going on now. And I had reached out to the city of Alpharetta, their floodwater division and everything, and all that emails are here saying, I'm having issues. How can the city help me? And the common answer was water goes from high to low, which I know and everybody knows. But the way the new construction Black Road came, more water was coming, additionally to what it was previously. So now it's always that I'm worried. I've been there for 25, 26 years. And I've tried several things to do, but water will still come. And if it rains, it's severe. 2 days ago it was raining and you could see how much water. So that in my mind saying, okay, Hampton Hall came, well, Water's Landing was being developed. Hampton Hall was third or second phase, finalizing everything, and then Blake came. The amount of water came, and I've been there for 25, 26 years. So my concern is that will the new development, which is right behind me now, right, what repercussions I will have? I know Alex, I know Michael have given us a lot of assurance to say, you'll be fine, everything will be fine. But being burned from the previous experience, being there for 25 years, it becomes a concern as a father to say, what if this increases? Where do I go? Previously, when I went to the city, they say, well, nothing much we can do. And so now I'm concerned. And so I come here with reservations. I'm not saying don't develop it. I know it's always good to have $1 million homes and have a small home that says, okay, the value of my home will go up at one time. I don't plan to sell the home. I've been there 25 years. And so I plan to retire there, and my son has been there for that many years. He said, Dad, don't sell, this is where we want to stay. But looking at the pictures, looking at history, I talked to Jill, the stormwater lady from the city. I talked to Michael, and I talked to Alex to say, hey, how can you help me? I'm worried, right? And I should be worried, right? So Jill said, hey, we can do some special conditions to ensure that in addition to the current floor, perhaps it will reduce but not increase. And I agree, but I don't know whether this is a fact. It's all on paper, right? So I'm here, and I believe this was the email I sent to this committee, and now I can see the faces to say, these are my concerns, these are my conditions, and how can we mitigate this thing where everybody's happy and life goes on. That's all I have to say. I will take any questions if you have from any of the members. And Mayor, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
We don't really have question and answer in this format. It's just an opportunity for you to advocate your position.
Yes, sir.
I'll probably ask some of our staff if they can clarify some of the things that you've discussed.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen me out.
Thanks, sir.
And last thing, happy holidays.
Is there anything we would like to add from staff's presentation about the stormwater flow and the addressing of that issue?
Sure. I did have a conversation with our stormwater engineer regarding her meeting with Mr. Thar. Ms. Bazinet believed that the three conditions that the applicant has, or I'm sorry, that the Mr. Thar has asked for you to add would be addressed with enforcement of our stormwater ordinance, as well as the applicant's proposed stormwater concept, which will capture the water in the pond on the southwest corner of the property and direct it through a pipe to the southeast corner of the property away from Mr. Thar's property. She believes that this will actually improve his condition, but she, again, was not able to make promises to Mr. Thar, the promises that he was seeking. But she did say that she believes these conditions are not necessary to be added, but if they were added by council to the list of conditions, there wouldn't be any harm in adding them.
Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Councilman Mitchell?
Michael, are the homes that are going in there, because I had a similar situation when a home was built right next to where water floods into our yard now, because they elevated the home right next to me. And it was said to have been elevated at the same degree as the older home that was there, but that's not the case, because when you raise the ground level, you increase the flow of water to the lower property. And so is that what's going to happen here? It is dirt being added and soil to where the properties are being built.
I would need to defer to the applicant to answer that question. I'm not aware, the applicant is not required to provide us with a grading plan at this time, but they would be more familiar with the development strategy if they're going to need to bring in any dirt.
Okay, yeah, I would love to know that. Thank you.
Councilman Will, did you have a question for staff?
I did, please. So our stormwater engineer says that potentially it will fix the issue, but she's not absolutely positive?
She doesn't ever provide a promise or guarantee to anybody that would come in and ask her, Mr. Thar is asking, and there was another condition that he was asking for that she just said, we just cannot make any promises on what will eventually happen. But she believes enforcement of our stormwater ordinance and the strategy that they have for their stormwater on this property will make Mr. Thar's condition better on his property as it relates to runoff.
And is it true that she said that adding his 3 stipulations wouldn't cause any harm or issues really at all?
Would you mind repeating that first part I missed?
He had listed 3 conditions.
Yes.
And she has agreed that those conditions wouldn't harm this project in any way?
If I could, Mr. Woodman, do you mind reading those 3? Because I remember
I'd like to
reading
get a
those
copy of
3,
them.
and I think it required the city to accept liability.
Okay.
So Mr. Thar. Do we have enough? So these are the 3 conditions that the applicant requested here. The stormwater engineer did review these 3 conditions Mr. Thar brought forward. And our stormwater engineer said, while she does not believe that these are necessary to add to the list of conditions, the 21 conditions that are recommended, if you did add them, there would be no harm to the applicant's project. She felt that they weren't necessary just because the strategy that's proposed, our stormwater regulations, would take care of these.
So the mayor stated that one of these might have some liability towards the city. Is that still true, or was that a 4th condition that was removed?
I would think, with condition 1, for example, and I apologize, I did not read these out, I just put them on the overhead, but condition 1 says, the new developer, South Vine Homes, shall ensure and commit that the release of additional water from the retention pond shall not directed to 170 Starboard Way, as 170 Starboard is on a lower land. I don't know that, it's not, these are city council conditions, and the way that this condition is written, it's saying the new developer will ensure. So I think that would really be up to the developer to accept that condition to be added. Condition 2 states all of the new dwelling homes and driveways runoff water shall not be directed to 170 Starboard Way. Our stormwater engineer believes the strategy that they're proposing will not direct the water to that property. Condition 3, only allow, if necessary, the water from the grass, landscape, and trees towards 170 Starboard Way. And as the applicant indicated, Mr. Tedderton indicated, that would be the case. So that buffer area, that perimeter buffer, that would be basically, there would continue to be stormwater runoff from that area, but the rest of the runoff that is existing on the property today would be captured in that pond and directed away from Mr. Thar's property to the southeast corner of the property.
Then I guess my question would be, would the developer be willing to accept those 3 conditions?
We'll have to ask the developer that.
Okay? I mean, it's hard to argue with pictures. You know what I'm saying? And if it's not going to harm the project, it's not going to cause problems, but it makes the homeowner happy, then I don't see why we wouldn't allow that if the developer would accept it. That's my thoughts.
I'm sorry, if we can just go ahead and wrap up the public hearing and then continue on with the discussion. I just don't want to get too far down the road before I call that out. We still
If we could what?
Call for the rest of the opposition and then offer the rebuttal time just to close the public hearing before the discussion gets too far down the road.
Thank you. I didn't realize we had any other opposition.
I do not have any cards that have been submitted, but if there's anyone else from the audience, I believe there is time still remaining.
So if there's anyone else that would like to come and speak against this application, now is your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment.
And Mr. Mayor, we have about 1 minute and 20 seconds left for the rebuttal time for the applicant.
And we could have questions after that?
Yes.
Just clarifying. Would the applicant like to respond?
Do I need to say my name again? No, we've got your Okay, all right.
We've got your name on record now.
That's fine. My name's Alex anyway, and owner of South Vine Homes. And so this is a little bit, not chicken and egg, but let me give you kind of, there's always a why behind the what. But this green on each side is undisturbed buffer. Okay, so what we would be agreeing to is one, we could just say, yeah, we'll agree to all of that. But just to give the council some context is whatever's happening in this green right here is going to remain. Now, saying that, this water is coming down. This is an old farm, and it's got terraces, just like you would see in an old farm, and it's coming down, and it fingers out this way. So we really believe that everything inside the perimeter we can agree to and say that it will emphatically not be increased, and we will agree that it can be decreased. But just in this buffer area, we're not disturbing that. So whatever is happening just in this 40 by 200 space or 40 by 300 foot area, we can't, that would be hard to agree to, that we would say it's going to do that. But all of this area back in here, all through up here, we can absolutely put our stamp on and say that it'll be even or even less than what he's currently experiencing today as far as water runoff and dissipation. We believe it will.
And that's time.
Now it's time for questions. Do we have a question from council? Councilman Mitchell.
Okay, so I appreciate that, and I understand that in the area that's undisturbed, it remains undisturbed. I get that. What about the orange area? Are you intending on bringing in more fill dirt and elevating the homes from where the ground level is currently?
Let me answer that. Okay. Mr. Mitchell, what we're trying to do down in the bottom there is of great benefit to the person that's concerned. We are going to put a detention pond virtually all the way across the bottom of the property so that all the water that's presently going down that old farm hill is going to be caught in that pond. Put your finger there. And then we're going to take it from near that neighbor all the way to the right and drop that water in a creek that's already there. So this should be much more beneficial to this person in the southwest corner than what they presently experience. We're catching in a pond with concrete foundations, all of that stuff, all of that water inside of that green spot, and we're taking it the other way.
Okay, so my question was, let me be clear.
Sure.
Are you bringing in fill dirt to elevate the homes where they will be built?
So I'll answer that the very best I can, exactly what you're asking. This is the highest point of the property. Our street will be going downhill. Our intention is to cut the streets in at almost the same exact height as that is coming down. We are not intending to build the site up and then elevate the homes out of the air. And so that happens sometimes if you're trying to force a basement or elevate things, and that is not in our intent at all. We're actually just going to use the existing topography as street grade, and then we'll set our houses in accordance with that. So I know what you're asking, and I do not believe, without having a full LDP, that I can say we're not intending that at all.
Okay. Part of the problem my neighbor had, they put in the detention pond, but the water flow was pointing toward our yard and not toward the detention pond, and all the King's men didn't catch that, that came out there to look at it. And so now we get all the water runoff. So I really sympathize with this gentleman, and I don't want that to happen to any other citizens anywhere with new construction. I'm all for new construction if it's done well. And as long as it goes in the detention pond and toward the stream.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you'll commit to those 3 conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Councilman Dorito.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the applicant, just the detention pond, is it going to be engineered in a way that accommodates additional stormwater runoff to help the neighbor out, or is it going to is it being built to accommodate the development itself?
My impression from discussions with our engineer and from Michael's discussions with Jill is that we will be taking a lot of water away from the current flow on the neighbor. We're going to capture water from 75, 80% of the property in that pond, with the pond sufficiently sized where it's not even an issue. And then we will slowly disperse that water to the east and into the creek. So the net result to the property owner who is suffering right now is that he should see a definite decrease in the amount of water that he experiences, substantial.
But it's the intention of the applicant to not exacerbate the existing problem, meaning I think under our code, we require that you can't
be no greater. It should be considerably less. We're catching all that water that's just rushing down a hill right now. And he is suffering. From this undeveloped property and from the subdivision that was developed to the west, his pictures are telling you the story that he has. He's getting a lot of water. We think that he's going to be a great deal better off when we set our detention pond in there and we catch 60, 70% of the water he's presently getting, and we ship it to the east.
And how bad is the topography there, the elevation of the?
Ask it a little louder, I'm sorry.
I think there was a comment made in the presentation early on that at least the left side of the property, the 4 homes, that the topography was very tough there, it was very steep, right?
No, it's not necessarily very tough or very steep. It just goes downhill at a gentle grade where we'll have stair-step basements going down. One thing I would like to say to everybody is one thing that we've worked through with your stormwater department as well as Ms. Cook is that this pond, the backside wall will actually be elevated at a higher level in case any of that water comes down. It's fully engineered. And we've agreed to meet all the city requirements as far as the backside of it and the way it faces, as well as any kind of replanting. We met with Mr. Shosak on site, walked the entire property, but I know all of these questions and I can answer them. It's a little easier for me just by the way my brain thinks, as if we had a dry erase board I could show you, but I feel very confident that we can meet the 3 requirements or conditions that y'all have stated. And I do know where things get redirected and where water wasn't coming, it is coming, and that's why we've designed this in a way that it all dissipate underground upstream as opposed to coming downstream directly on this yard. We have walked this site years ago. We know what's there. We believe that this is a great solution to everybody involved.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, I had two quick questions for staff, but I don't know if you want to do that right now.
Let's try to resolve the questions for the
no,
applicant,
okay.
and then we can always
Thank you.
go back to staff. Councilman Will.
Just for clarity, I've heard in the beginning you said it would be tough to accept the 3 conditions, but then when Councilman Mitchell asked you, you said you would accept the 3 conditions. Are you willing to accept the 3 conditions?
Yes, sir. I mean, I believe those 3 conditions state that the crux of it is that there'll be the same or less water runoff to his property, and yes, we're willing to stand behind that. I was just merely trying to state that the green that goes on the side is undisturbed, so whatever that is, we can't touch it. So it's hard to say, well, that little area there is going to have less water than it did before if we can't touch it. But everything inside.
I understand. You've been very clear that you think it's going to be less, and I believe you. However, since there's no harm, I'm just asking if you'll accept those 3 conditions so that the homeowner can be.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you again, gentlemen. Councilman Dorito.
Just real quick, the history of the property that was referred to, that our resident, Ms. Thayer, spoke about, that caused the problem to his house, redirected more water to his property. Was that before? That was unincorporated when that was built, right?
Phase 7 was approved. It was definitely built, it was part of City of Alpharetta when it was constructed.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe that property, Phase 7 in Hampton Hall, was under construction about 2015 timeframe, 2014-15 timeframe. About the time that I had started with the city is why I had recalled that.
I don't know if you can answer this, but you spoke to Jill, our stormwater engineer for the city. She stays on top of this, right, as far as what's been presented here tonight from the applicant, the commitments they're making in public here tonight.
Yes.
She would be aware of that and make sure that as this development goes on, that she's doing whatever she can to mitigate any sort of
Yes,
stormwater
our land
problem.
development team does have access to our zoning conditions. They expect that there are zoning conditions placed on properties. And Jill was involved in drafting the zoning conditions that were placed, that are recommended in the conditions. In fact, condition 15 through 19 all are related to stormwater. And Jill actually added condition number 18 that specifically is talking about all impervious improvements shall drain to the stormwater pond. So she's added that condition, and it really addresses Mr. Thar's concerns.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you again, Mr. Woodman. All right, gentlemen, if we have all our questions answered at this point, I'll call for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd offer a motion tonight to approve Z-24-16/V-24-25 Hampton Hall South Vine Homes, adding the 3 conditions presented this evening from Mr. Thoyer's email dated December 12th and staff presentation.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Will. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as outlined by Mayor Pro Tem, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations. So next item up on our public hearing agenda is the PH-24-24 Unified Development Code Text Amendments, Recreation Facilities Indoor, Historic Preservation Incentive, Flag Lots, and Procedures. This is the first reading. Ms. Eswine, if you don't mind, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Article 2 and 4 of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend regulations pertaining to recreation facilities, indoor, historic preservation, incentive flag lots, and procedures, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cook, I believe you have the floor on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The next item before you is some recommendations to amendments to the UDC, specifically 2.2.14, C1 Neighborhood Commercial Conditional Uses in Table 2.2, list of permissible and conditional uses to add recreation facilities indoor as a conditional use in the C1 zoning district. And so these are the type of indoor, like kids' birthday party type uses. Kids Empire comes to mind, Jump Zone. So we found that they're allowed within the C2 zoning district, but not within the C1. So this is just a recommendation to add it as a conditional use. It would still come before council for review. The other recommended change we're recommending is the section 2.3.1, general exemptions, flag lots, and subsection 2.9.5, incentives available to historic properties following designation, and to add regulations allowing flag lots as an incentive for saving a historic structure. So right now, flag lots are prohibited within the city, so what we're proposing is that they be allowed for a historic structure if approved by council. So there would still be the public hearing process. They would have to come in, make sure that council could see that the architecture match and the massing matches the existing historic home. So this is something that we're recommending as another incentive that they could come before council and request. We're also recommending amendments to UDC Article 4 procedures, which are related to fees associated with the public hearing process, campaign contribution amounts, and this is purely cleanup, because if you look in the UDC, it says that you must disclose if you've made a contribution of $100. However, the application says $250. So if we take the fees out of the Unified Development Code, as those change, as advertising fees change, we don't have to go back and change the UDC. And then lastly, we're looking at consolidation of the development of regional impact subsection. I'll show that to you because it's pretty large. So we have different developments that if they meet a certain criteria, they're required to go to the Atlanta Regional Commission as a development of regional impact. But we had listed the list of what the criteria was several years ago in the Unified Development Code. And since those change, they shouldn't be listed in the code. They should just be, people should just refer back. Here it is. People should really have to do the research, since it changes periodically, to see what the requirements are for a development of regional impact. And for instance, mixed use, they've already changed that. At one time, it was greater than 500,000 square feet. Now it just says if it's a mixed use within a suburban city. So just clean up for these, but I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Director Cook on this item? Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards in favor of this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if you'd like to come forward and speak in favor of this item, now's your chance. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do we have any public comment cards opposing this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if you oppose this item, now is your chance to say so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd offer a motion this evening to approve PH-24-24, Unified Development Code Text Amendment, Recreation Facilities, Indoor, Historic Preservation Incentive Flag Lots, and Procedures as presented this evening by Director Cook.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move right on to PH-24-18, the Unified Development Code text amendments regarding signs. This is the second reading. The first reading of this item occurred during the December 2nd, 2024 City Council meeting. Ms. Eswine, do you mind reading this ordinance?
An ordinance by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Article 2 of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend regulations pertaining to signs, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Director Cook?
Mayor and Council, there are no changes from the first reading for this ordinance. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for Director Cook? Thank you very much. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards in favor of this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if you'd like to speak in favor, now's your chance. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do we have any public comment cards in opposition?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if you're opposed to this item, now's your chance. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council on this item?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, make a motion this evening to approve PH-24-18, Unified Development Code text amendment signs as presented this evening on the second reading.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. Do we have a
Second.
second? Second by Councilman Dorito, I believe. All those in favor, unless there's any discussion. All those in favor, please vote yes. Councilman Mitchell. And it does pass unanimously. So, Director Cook, before we begin this item, this is the second reading, but I wanted you to explain why this is going to be in a different format than we had originally anticipated.
Thank you, Mayor. So there were some changes from the first reading to the second reading. So although you may wish to defer the vote, we still wanted to have the public hearing so people could be familiar with what those changes were. And then we also wanted to address some of the questions that we had from the first reading. So although you may wish to defer that vote after the public hearing, we still wanted to make sure that the public was aware of what the changes are and some of the questions that the mayor and council had. And if I could go ahead with the changes.
Sure, let me just,
Okay.
for the public record, I'll note that this is PH-24-17, Unified Development Code text amendments, short-term rentals. This is the second reading. The first reading of this item occurred during December 2nd City Council meeting. And before you begin, Ms. Cook, I'd like to allow Ms. Eswine the opportunity to read the ordinance.
Thank you. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta to establish short-term rental as a permitted use for certain properties, to provide for relevant definitions, to establish regulations for the use of property for short-term rental, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Director Cook, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Just to recap, so the request is to add the short-term rental definition within our Unified Development Code. And to recap, we don't currently have that definition. We do not have a process if somebody opened up a short-term rental. There is not an application process, nor is there a limitation. There would be limitations if you had an established HOA or POA, but there's not a city process. So our goal with different comments we had heard from the public was to establish an ordinance. We had a lot of different input over the last couple years, and so we brought forward our recommendation, which is to add the definition, but it's also to cap it at 5% within a platted development. So there would be a maximum of 5% of the short-term rentals within a platted development. One of the comments, and I think it was Councilman Dorito had asked at the last meeting, would the 5% be included within the 10%? And just to explain that, a lot of times with, especially in the last 5 years, if we've rezoned property to a residential zoning district, we've required that a maximum of 10% of rental, maximum of 10% of the homes can be used for rental. We went back and looked at those conditions, and it's generic that says a maximum of 10% can be used for rental. So it was our conclusion after talking with the city attorney, then that means that would include the STRs also, if you had that condition. So we did verify that was included within the 10%. We also, it was brought to our attention that we didn't include the CUP zoning district. So when you go to the second page, it says Table 2.2 of Article 2 of the Unified Development Code shall be amended by adding short-term rental use as a permitted use. And then we had listed AG, RE, R, R22, R15, R10, and the different residential zoning districts. We also, it was brought to our attention that we did not include the CUP zoning district, and we have several subdivisions within the city that are zoned CUP. A lot of those were annexed from Fulton County. We have Windward, we have several areas that are zoned CUP. The difference in the CUP zoning district is that any use in a CUP is conditional. So since it would be within a CUP zoning district and anything in a CUP is required to be conditional, we had to list that as a conditional use. So that is the change from the first reading. And I think, I'll ask the city attorney, was there another change that we were going to discuss as part of this section for the Unified Development Code?
No, I didn't make any other changes to this.
Okay, so the other ones would be within the permitting.
That's right. I just wanted to make sure before I said that, because we've touched this so many times.
Yeah. So I'll answer any questions that you may have regarding the ordinance, the new information that you may have, or any of the information, of course.
Councilman DeRito.
Kathy, just one question, and appreciate you addressing that other question earlier on. I'm concerned about the corporate investment in properties around the country where they're accumulating homes in clusters. And is there anything we could consider putting in this ordinance that protects that from happening in Alpharetta?
We already require, when something is zoned, that it has to either be for sale or for rent. So of course, I think what you're talking about is if somebody bought an entire neighborhood that maybe didn't have an HOA or a POA and then started renting those out. We had somebody that actually tried to do that, and it was about 10 townhome units. We did notify them that that does not meet the zoning, and they ended up selling all of those as for sale. So our current definitions within our zoning districts would prohibit.
Would prohibit that
Yes.
from happening, even in an HOA or?
Yes,
Or a
yes,
platted
because it goes
subdivision?
back to the zoning.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Cook? Thank you once again for all your tremendous time and efforts. And
Thank you.
And your staff. We do have a question by Mayor Pro Tem.
Ms. Cook, we were talking about deferral. Was there a date that somebody had picked to do this deferral to?
Let me see if the city clerk, do you have the next available? January 6th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
7th?
6th.
6th, okay, thank you. Councilman Hypes, did you say you have a question? Please proceed.
Ms. Cook, I'm looking at the applicable zoning districts under that subsection 2. Is that intended to be all the zoning districts where residential could exist?
No, because you also have mixed use. You have the new downtown zoning, which requires city council approval for the DTLW. So there are other zoning districts that have a residential portion, but you know, even when you look at MU, it's not majority of single family. And all of those, we have put conditions that say maximum of 10% for the rental. Now, we could certainly include those if you'd rather us include the mixed-use district when we bring it back, as well as the downtown live work.
Well, as I've followed the discussion, you know, I've been interested in the dynamic between existing homeowners and who they have next to them and the rights of folks to provide this product, so to speak, for the city. And I'm just trying to understand what makes mixed use not applicable to the thought process that we're applying across these other zoning districts.
We were looking at subdivisions that were platted individual and not part of a larger mixed-use development. And that's why initially the CUP was not included, because that's a master plan development. However, what we found, and the reason we chose to are recommending that CUP is included, is there were several subdivisions, entire subdivisions, when they were annexed. We gave the designation of CUP, although they weren't a master plan. So all of them appear the same, the CUP and all the other districts where they're standalone subdivisions that are platted. But if you would like to include all zoning designations, we could certainly include those, which would be adding the mixed-use MU.
Which is the one that I saw on the list going through the Muni Code here. I really wasn't focused on any of the other potential residential zoning districts.
And it would be the same. It would be a conditional use, because mixed use doesn't allow anything by right.
But if I'm reading this paragraph 2, is that a cap on short term, or is that a conditional use on short term? I mean, do you have short term as a matter of right if you're underneath the percentages, or is it still a conditional use, or could it be a...
Oh, no. So it would be a conditional use in the CUP.
Okay.
Not the other zoning districts. But the reason we have to treat that differently, that it's a conditional use, is because everything in a CUP is a conditional use.
Well, if there's any merit to including mixed use, because it seems like a lot of the zoning that's coming forward, the applicants are asking to take advantage of the mixed use,
sure,
which includes people making significant investments in those upscale neighborhoods that are being converted to mixed use. And that's the point where I feel like the rationale and the tension between the two competing views comes into play. So if there's a reason to not include it, I'm open to hearing that. But otherwise, it seems like that ought to be included as well.
I think it's a great comment. We'll add that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Cook?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And there'll have to be a vote to defer on this one? Okay. That's the wish of the council.
Do we need to proceed with public comment first before we defer?
Yes, please.
Just clarifying. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards in favor of this item?
I have one card in favor, Mr. Mayor, and this is for Valerie Manley, if you'd like to come forward. If there are any other folks who would like to speak in favor, you can go ahead and come up to the front line.
Valerie Manley, 5140 South Lake Drive in Alpharetta. Happy holidays, everybody. Good to see everybody. I would like to say, as a 35-year resident of Alpharetta, that we've all seen the tremendous success that Alpharetta has become, and I really wanted to say thank you all to staff, to council, to Molly, to being part of this very large effort to protect, to keep Alpharetta from becoming a victim of its own success. Where short-term rental is exactly what you'll see when something is so successful that everybody wants to come have a stay. The community of Windward, where I've lived for these 35 years, has had some interesting issues, but the discovery of the CUP issue, and including CUP in this ordinance, would be a very welcome change, and I hope y'all are open to it. Because what that says then is that any owner, corporate or individual, who wants to consider buying a property and converting it into a short-term rental would then have to go through the conditional use permitting process through Planning Commission, City Council. And I take a lot of comfort in what I just heard earlier, the degree to which council is mindful of the concerns of neighboring homeowners and is very interested in protecting the neighboring homeowners. So I'm going to put a lot of faith that this council and all councils going forward will exercise that same care and concern in hearing applications for conditional use for a short-term rental in a CUP or mixed-use development going forward. I want to thank you all very much for doing this, and I hope you see it through successfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you say there were any others?
Those are all, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone else would like to come speak in favor of this item, now is your chance to do so. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do we have any public comment cards in opposition?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak in opposition to this item, now is your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion to defer?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I offer a motion to defer PH-24-1 Side Unified Development Code UDC text amendment short-term rentals as reviewed this evening and have that deferred to the next meeting on January 6th.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Will, I think. Second by Councilman Will. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, I was pulling up the next.
He wasn't sure we could
ask-
discuss after on a motion to defer.
I think that's okay. The reason for the deferral or the ordinance specifically? Oh, to debate the motion? Yeah, go ahead. That's okay.
I was just given an opportunity to comment. So I think it's the right thing to do considering the change that was just discovered recently around the CUP. And we don't want to cause any more disruption to the public. We just want to make sure we go and proceed in a timely manner at the correct time, and give everybody opportunity to adjust the change. That being said, all those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. And that does pass unanimously, and I believe that'll be January 6th. Same place, same time. Ms. Eswine, will we proceed with the text amendments?
Yes.
Okay. So if you don't mind, if you will do the second reading, I would appreciate that for the Code of the City of Alpharetta text amendments.
An ordinance to amend Chapter 10 of the Alpharetta Code of Ordinances to establish regulations to apply to short-term rentals. So I will present this item. There have been a few changes since the last meeting. So as I had discussed with you when I presented this earlier this month, I added in a provision to the ordinance on the adoption language. So it's not actually in the substance, but the idea here is to allow for individuals who want to operate a short-term rental to come in, apply for their license, and for staff to be able to notify those short-term rental users that we know about of the adoption of this ordinance to the extent that they don't know, and give them time to come in and actually apply for and obtain a license. And so Section 4 on the very first page of the ordinance says that the ordinance will become effective immediately following the date of adoption. So staff can go ahead and start the process of putting the application together. However, in an effort to educate the community and provide time for applications for licenses to be submitted and processed, no enforcement action shall be taken under this ordinance until 180 days following the date of adoption. And again, that is just to educate the public, give them time to come into compliance, give staff time to get their processes in place. In addition to that change, I also made a modification related to what the applicant is required to submit when they are in a subdivision. And so, so that the burden is not on city staff to try and parse through HOA documents and figure out what's binding, what's not, what The ordinance now requires is that where a property to be used as a short-term rental is located within a platted subdivision, the owner shall submit a sworn statement confirming short-term rental is not prohibited by private restrictions that may be contained in restrictive covenants or other private contractual agreements or arrangements as applicable to the property. And so we're putting that burden on the applicant. They're signing a statement under oath, basically, that they are not prohibited from operating short-term rental based on the covenants or private restrictions. In speaking with Kathy this afternoon and in response to Councilman Dorito's question about rental percentages, Kathy also suggested, and I agree with her, that we include in that sworn statement that the use is not otherwise prohibited based on the applicable number of rental, the percentage that's required. So if there is a 10% cap for rental, that might not be a private restriction as to short-term rental, but we want to draw that to an applicant's attention, and so I would suggest that, because I'm going to ask that this be postponed for a final vote until January 6th as well, so that it can go along with the UDC amendment, that when I bring that back, that I add that requirement to this section here, just so that we're all on the same page about that 10% rental cap, in addition to HOA restrictions otherwise. And beyond that, there is one additional section in section 10-434E, where we were discussing the 5% rental cap in the UDC as well as the placement restrictions, where you can't have two next door to each other along the same roadway. And I think staff would be empowered to interpret and apply the ordinance in a reasonable and prudent manner anyway, but so that the public is aware of the existence of that code section and how applications will be processed. I have added this section that says that for purposes of ensuring compliance with the regulations set forth in section 2.7.1 of the Unified Development Code, licenses issued under this ordinance shall be issued on a first-come, first-served basis upon receipt of a complete application, provided that priority shall be given to timely submitted renewal applications. Again, I think staff would be empowered to reasonably interpret and apply priority based on renewal applications anyway, but we just wanted to recognize this explicitly in the ordinance so that, let's say we're a couple years into this and there is a subdivision that has the 5% maximum duly licensed. So they've come in, they've applied, gone through all of our procedures, and we have a 5% short-term rental cap met in that subdivision. And it's December 1st, so they haven't come in and submitted their renewal applications, and somebody comes in new who's wanting to have a short-term rental in that subdivision. This is saying that the renewal applications would get priority so that staff wouldn't be obligated basically to process a new application in a subdivision that already has a cap for the next year where the cap technically hasn't been met, if that makes sense. And so with that, those are all of the changes that have been made to the ordinance since the last reading.
Councilman Hypes?
Does the ordinance require the disclosure of an individual, of an entity that's an owner? The definition of owner is a person, but the vast majority of property ownership is held by LLC entities, which masks who the owners are. And does that frustrate what we're trying to do if there's no person held accountable, but rather Acme LLC?
I don't believe it speaks to that specifically. We can certainly add that language in. I think we actually just did it with the alcohol ordinance.
Yes.
And so I have that. It won't take me long to add that in, and I can clarify that.
In terms of accountability, I mean, I feel like I could game the system in 2 seconds if I wanted to by setting up some LLCs masking ownership. So if we had a requirement that notwithstanding title ownership, that there is that responsible person behind, that would make it more effective, in my opinion.
I can certainly make that change, absolutely.
Councilman Will?
Just playing devil's advocate, Molly, if we are saying that the 10% also includes the 5%, 10% rental includes the 5%, if a subdivision already meets their 10%, then there would be no short-term rentals allowed.
Correct.
correct?
I believe so.
And if they had 5% short-term rentals, then long-term would be limited to 5 as well.
Correct. If as the condition that Kathy read is what's applicable to that particular zoning district, to those properties. So, you know, you actually adopted a zoning today that had that condition on it, and it speaks generically. But we don't necessarily know what's in those covenants, and, you know, they may have taken the language that we specified and put it in their covenants with slightly different language. I can't say that they have or have not. Without seeing the specific language, I can't guarantee that, but I would expect yes. If it's just a general rental restriction, you're correct.
Subject, of course, to the grandfathering, which we've spoken about.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from Ms. Eswan?
I'm sorry, I was still processing. What was the question?
No, I was just asking if council had any more questions for you.
Okay, no, that's all of my presentation. So.
And I see none from council. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards advocating for this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, now's your chance, if you're chomping at the bit, to advocate for this policy. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do we have anyone, public comment cards, opposing this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Once again, if you'd like to come forward and oppose this item, now is your opportunity. I believe you've done this before, but please state your name and address for the public record, sir.
Good evening. I'm David Horst. I'm at the residence of 2010 Brook Forest Court, Alpharetta 30022. I'm not actually against it. I just want to get some clarification because there's a few things that I'm unclear about. One, in the prior setting, there was discussion about the map, which had 89 STRs listed out of the city of Alpharetta. And there, in the prior meeting, there were some people that said that their STRs were not included in that. So I'm wondering, with the changes that are happening and the caps that are happening, is there going to be an updated map available to explain how many STRs are going to be left over after these caps are inserted into the process? So the ones that maybe weren't counted and ones that are going to be removed because of the basement situations or the partial house rental situations, and then all the ones that will be removed because of the maximum capacity. Also, I have a question about the non-HOA communities. I think HOA, and I said this before, HOA communities should be allowed to have whatever rules they want in place, and everybody should respect that. But in the case of the communities that don't have HOAs, and there is an excess of 10% rentals in that, even long-term rentals, how does the 5% and 10% rule work? Because it's unclear to me. It seems like this is creating a new 10% across the city. Every neighborhood has a 10% cap. And so those are my concern points.
You heard me mention earlier, this isn't a question and answer, but I'll have staff address the points as you've made.
Thank you. And sorry, one more. I haven't heard any updates on what is considered to be a grandfathered or what the rules are for grandfathering. I'm curious for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cook, would you like to address the 10% issue?
Mayor and Council, once this is approved, we will have to run another list to see where the short-term rentals are. So this list is probably from 8 months ago, so that is something that we would run. There's a service that provides that called Granicus. There's multiple different services, but we would contract with them to run the list. So absolutely it would be updated, and it would be updated regularly. I think the other question was, what happens to the HOA developments that do not have an HOA or POA? So we would just be looking at the maximum 5% short-term rental. There's no way for us to know how many are being rented within a development. We would know if an entire subdivision is being purchased and then all of it rented. But as far as how many are being rented long-term for a year or more, we would not know how many are being rented. So we would be looking at the maximum 5%.
Thank you. And I think it might be helpful to the gentleman that had this question is the 10% was only applied as a zoning condition.
Correct.
In my recollection, maybe as far back as 10 years ago, because we started to see investors engulfing entire neighborhoods or becoming a large portion of a zoned single-family residential. So this isn't, if it's an older neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA, the likelihood of it having any 10% condition on that is pretty close to zero.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and I think you're correct. It's probably 10 years, maybe longer than 10 years. We were putting the condition of the maximum 10%.
Right. And we didn't have a lot of high-density residential until about 10 years ago when townhomes started propagating in those neighborhoods.
True.
Becoming more commonplace. Ms. Eswine, do you mind addressing his other question?
About grandfathering? Yeah.
Pardon?
About grandfathering, I think
Yes.
that's what you're referring to. Yes, so we've already started discussing what that would look like. As I've mentioned during prior council meetings, that's a very fact-intensive question that has to be determined on a case-by-case basis. The first thing that we would look at would be, and in fact, obviously there's nothing in the UDC revision that's being proposed or in the ordinance that directly addresses that, right? But in the UDC itself, there is a section dealing with nonconformities, nonconforming uses. There's a definition for that and provisions governing it. And so we would look at that. But the general standard for whether something is a grandfathered use is whether prior to the time of the change in the code, it was in all respects lawful. And so we would look at, I think Director Cook has mentioned previously that sometimes we've found short-term rentals that are renting only one room and that doesn't comply with the zoning for the particular property. So that, in that case, I think we would be able to probably make an argument, though I'm not going to commit to it right now on the record, right, that it's not a grandfathered use because it's not lawful in all respects. And so there would be a review on that basis. Generally, what I would expect that would look like is somebody would come in, apply for a permit, apply for a license, and we would say, okay, well, if the cap had already been met, or if it's a placement that's not compliant with the code, then we'd have to say, okay, well, you're not eligible. And at that point, it would be that the applicant would be saying, well, I'm a grandfathered use, and we would have to ask for documentation. Obviously, the next question is whether they've been short-term renting at all. They would need to demonstrate short-term rental activity on the property, and we would have to weigh that. So there are a number of factors that would come into play here, but the code, one, already speaks to nonconformities already. It's something that we deal with whenever there's a change in a use in the code, and something that Director Cook and I are prepared to take a look at when the time comes.
Thank you quite much. And if I recall, you had asked that we defer this item as well until January 6th?
Yes, I'd ask that you postpone the vote on it so that it travels at the same time as the UDC amendment.
So not a deferral, but a postponement?
Well, if you want to call it a deferral.
You're an attorney, so I'm paying attention to the words you use.
Under Robert's rules, it's postponed to a date certain is what I had in my head, but I'm okay with however you do it. We all know what we're talking about here, so.
Okay, thank you. If we have no other questions for staff, do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We'll have a motion tonight to defer the code of the City of Alpharetta Text Amendment short-term rental regulations and licensing as presented by City Attorney Ms. Eswine, and that date will be set for January 6th.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel and a second by Councilman Will. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the deferral, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So that will wrap up the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. We'll move on to new business. First item under new business is contract approval for the on-call Arboricultural Services. Pete, that's harder than your name. Director Sisevich, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, I had to get briefed on the verbiage as well from Will in my office. Before United is a joint venture project between Public Works and Recreation Parks and Cultural Services, and hiring a arboricultural vendor to assist us in tree removal, tree care, pruning, etc. We have needs throughout the right-of-way, as well as Morgan has needs in his department with the greenway and with all the parks. We went out for a RFP on August 15th. We had 4 vendors submit proposals, and Bartlett Tree Care is the top-rated firm. They were also maybe not be considered the lowest price, but they were also the most efficient. In other words, their hourly rate was $5 or $10 more, but their time to get the task done was several hours less. So in the end, they were the most economically feasible to work with. So it's an on-call contract for 5 years. We are looking to have renewals every year, as well as work on a task order basis.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any questions for Director Sisevich on this item? Thank you very much. Ms. Shapiro.
We have no public comment cards, sir.
However, if anyone would like to come advocate for the arboricultural services, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have any public comment cards opposing?
We do not.
However, one more chance. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment on that item. We'll have a motion from council.
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the award of the on-call arboricultural services contract to Bartlett Tree Experts and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Have a motion by Councilman Dorito, a second by Councilman Brady. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes. Where'd Dan go? There he is.
He's going to abstain.
You're keeping us in suspense. And it does pass unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thank you, Pete. We appreciate it. Next item under new business is resolution and contract approval for North Point Parkway right-of-way acquisition. Ms. Eswine, you have the resolution to read, please.
Mr. Mayor, we actually removed this item from the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. So we can go on to the next one.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Shortening this meeting is not going to sadden anyone. So we'll move on to item C under new business, and that's memorandum of understanding for the North Fulton SWAT team. Director Robinson, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, we currently have a North Fulton SWAT team that consists of Alpharetta, Milton, and Roswell. And recently, Johns Creek expressed an interest in joining our team. They were a part of another team with some other cities in the metro area, and that team has made some changes, and so they reached out to us, asked if they could join our team, which we were happy to acquiesce to that. We already have a great relationship with Johns Creek. Also, it would be obviously bringing more resources into our team, saving money, all good reasons, and again, ultimately, it helps us serve the North Fulton area even more effectively than we already are with our SWAT services. So we're asking you to approve the MOU regarding this. The MOU is almost the exact same that we've had currently with the 3 cities, except as you see there, the percentages regarding cost sharing now change with a 4th city coming in. And again, that cost sharing is based on population.
Any questions for Director Robinson? Councilman Will.
Chief, I'm looking at the report here. It says that they're going to kick in 29% of the overall costs.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what the overall costs are?
Off the top of my head, no, but I can certainly find that out for you. Overall cost annually?
For the SWAT team annually, yeah. If they're covering 29%, I'm just curious if maybe our Director of Finance would know that.
You know that off the top of your head, Tom?
Not off the top of your head. But it's going to cut 29% of our costs.
It's going to save us some money, as I said, but I don't have an exact figure on that. But those costs vary depending on call-outs, things like that too, obviously. But,
and we get more resources to boot because we have more officers
100%.
available. All right,
No,
thank you.
it's a win all the way around, we feel like.
Any other questions on this? Councilman Dorito.
Chief, just to follow up on Councilman Will's question, because I'm just curious for education purposes. How much equipment does Alpharetta provide in, like the SWAT vehicle? Does that reside in Alpharetta? Does each town have their own? Or?
Well, so using the SWAT vehicle, for instance, that was a purchase that was made that was shared by all 3, again, using the cost breakdown. So currently we house the vehicle, but there are different tools maybe in different parts, of each city, honestly, but we tend to be a little more centrally located, so oftentimes we house most of the major equipment.
But the cost sharing applies to those types of things as well,
Yes.
correct? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro, any public comment cards?
We do not have any, Mr. Mayor.
And the public's dwindling, but if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the SWAT team item, now's your chance. Seeing none, close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the City of Alpharetta, City of Roswell, City of Milton, and the City of Johns Creek as it relates to the Unified SWAT and Crisis Negotiation Team, also known as the North Fulton SWAT Team. Authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
I have a motion by Councilman Will to approve, second by Councilman Hypes. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. And it passes unanimously, so we'll move on to the next item, which is resolution for the first responder post-traumatic stress disorder coverage benefit. Ms. Eswine, there is a resolution I'd like you to read, please.
A resolution by the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to add membership in a fund of Georgia Interlocal Risk Management Agency, GIRMA.
Thank you very much. Director Harris, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. House Bill 451 was passed this past year and requires that all public entities in Georgia offer a supplemental benefit program for those first responders that are diagnosed with PTSD. And it's a two-part benefit. That it's a once-in-a-lifetime benefit, but there's two parts. One is a lump sum payment of $3,000, and then there's a disability benefit that will kick in after 90 days for a period of 36 months, which would pick up 60% of the employee's salary. It's a program that it's just best to get it through cost-wise. I think it's MetLife, but get it through GMA under their program. So it's about $36,260 for that cost, based on police, fire, and E911.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for Director Harris? Thank you very much. Ms. Shapiro, any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to speak in favor or opposition, now's your chance to do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the city's participation in the PTSD policy offered by the Georgia Municipal Association, Georgia Interlock Risk Management, for the benefit of the first responders of the city of Alpharetta, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
So we have a motion by Councilman Will, a second by Councilman Brady.
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Next item is the grant application, Federal Environmental Protection Agency, Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling. Director Rogers, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I apologize for my voice.
I'm going to say, everybody sounded a little hoarse this evening.
I feel well. I have no symptoms. I'm not sick in any way. It's just, this is what's coming out. I can't explain it. So, but tonight, we're requesting approval to apply for a grant through the Environmental Protection Agency, known as the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling Grant, commonly called SWIFTR. The SWIFTR grant will allow us to engage through a community composting program our residents, schools, and businesses in Alpharetta. The short story is leftover food waste would be collected and dehydrated on site. That'd be the home, the school, or the business. The dried remains, which is odorless, will not attract pests, or do not mold, are taken to the old Rucker farm and composted. The compost then is used on site at the oil farm. The community composting promotes healthy soils. Without composting, the food waste ends up in landfills emitting harmful greenhouse gases. This local composting program was one of the recommendations in the approved City of Alpharetta Agricultural Plan adopted by Mayor and Council in December of 2022. The 3-year SWIFTR program requires no match from the city, and it is not written or implied program requirements after the 3-year program, grant program. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for Director Rogers? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro?
We have no public comment cards, sir.
However, if anybody wants to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. Make a motion that council approve and authorize the Community Agriculture and Sustainability Services Division to apply for a solid waste infrastructure for recycling grant program for political subdivisions of states and territories grant from the EPA as described by Director Rogers and to authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
We have a motion by Councilman Heitz. Do we have a second? Second. I have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. So next item up will be the resolution authorizing the use of eminent domain for parcel 6, Old Milton Parkway project. Ms. S. Wine.
A resolution by the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta authorizing the city attorney to exercise the city's powers of eminent domain to acquire certain interests in properties situated in the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, for public purposes, including public transportation purposes. As you indicated, Mr. Mayor, this is for parcel 6 on the Old Milton Parkway project. The parcel owners are Realty Corp. 528 LLC, and the just and adequate compensation from the appraiser for this parcel, which will be paid into the registry of the court, is $3,800. So we'd ask for the approval so that this property can be acquired and the project move forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any questions from Ms. Eswine?
I think it's parcel 11. You referenced 6. Am I correct? Or at least that's what I'm reading.
It's parcel ID number 11-001-000021-084, but I do believe the parcel number that I was referring to is just the common parcel that we refer to from the project.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Shapiro?
We have no public comment cards, Mr. Mayor.
Any public comments? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council on this item?
Yes, Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution to authorize the use of eminent domain to acquire property interest in tax parcel number 11-0010-002-1084, parcel known as Realty Corp. 528 LLC, of the Old Milton Parkway Improvement Project, and with authorization of the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
I have a motion by Councilman Dorito. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? All those in favor of this item, please vote yes. And it is unanimous. It does pass. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the resolution authorizing the use of eminent domain for parcel 22 for Old Milton Parkway project. Ms. Eswine, once again, we have a resolution.
A resolution by the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, authorizing the city attorney to exercise the city's powers of eminent domain to acquire certain interests in properties situated in the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, for public purposes, including public transportation purposes. So this is also for the Old Milton Parkway project, as you mentioned. This, however, is for what we commonly refer to as parcel 22. This would be for parcel owners H&M Alpharetta LLC, Farmers and Merchants Bank of Long Beach, and Public Supermarkets, Inc., which is a tenant for this parcel, and the just and adequate compensation from the appraiser to be paid into the registry of the court is $99,600, and I'd ask that this be approved as well.
Any questions from Ms. Eswine? Thank you, ma'am. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, and offer a motion to approve resolution authorizing the use of eminent domain for parcel 22 for Old Milton Parkway project as presented by Ms. Eswine.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Heitz. Any discussion? All those in favor of the item, please vote yes. And that does pass unanimously. So the last item under new business will be the resolution supporting General Assembly local delegation to amend the city charter regarding elections. Ms. Eswine, would you please read that resolution?
A resolution by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, supporting a local delegation to the General Assembly and amending the city charter by amending the provision related to election by majority vote.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lagerbloom?
Thank you, Mayor. So, this item comes to the agenda tonight as a request of a couple of council members who asked that an item be placed on the agenda. You've adopted a resolution that allows for that to happen. What this resolution does is really one thing, and it would, if it passed, it would transmit your request to the local delegation that in the next legislative session that begins after the first of the year, that a bill would be introduced that would seek to change Section 5.16 of our charter from the language that it has today, which requires plurality for somebody to end up in elected office, to that of majority vote. So the difference is very clear and distinct. Where with the plurality system, the one we have today, it's just the most vote getter that ends up being elected. If the charter were to change to majority vote, then the person that would win, no matter how many people would be in the race, would have to receive 50% plus one of the recorded vote to be able to be elected. If this charter were to be changed, there is a possibility that we would end up with a runoff in an election, because the first time you could have a candidate not get to the 50% plus one. But I do want to be very, very clear that you are not changing the charter by adopting this resolution tonight. You are simply, as a council, and at least the couple that brought it forward and wanted the council to discuss it, wanted to ask our local delegation after the first of the year to consider making this change in the form of a bill. So if you vote yes for this tonight, or if you vote no for it tonight, you're not doing anything to the charter. It's just simply potentially telegraphing the desire of the elected body in asking one of our local delegation members to make the change. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Lagerbloom? Councilman Dorito.
Hey, Chris, just for the public's information, I don't think there's any cities around us that are similar to what we currently, how we run our elections in Alpharetta, correct? They're all majority.
Yeah, without going down a list, there are way more majority votes than there are plurality cities at this point, yes.
I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Councilman Mitchell.
And how long, Chris, have we operated under the plurality?
I don't know that Alpharetta has ever not operated under plurality, at least for as long as I can recall. It's been in that
I think
model.
it's been since 1858. And I personally, this should not be on the agenda tonight, in my opinion, without holding a workshop before we bring something to our legislative council. My vote is no. All it's going to do is add more money to the taxpayer to have runoff elections, because you're never going to get 51% when you don't even have 35% of the people who are voting in any major election, and they get the majority of the vote. That's always been okay, and we've always worked with that and never needed a runoff election, and plurality has worked for us all the way in the past. We're talking $40,000 to $60,000 to a taxpayer in addition to have a runoff election. Now, all this is going to do is go to the person who's able to get the most business and the most money raised from the business community. They write a check, they send out a letter, and then developers and business owners send them checks. And whoever gets the most money, that's the one who's going to win the thing, because they're the only one who will be able to afford a $50,000 or $60,000 election. And I think the poorest among us should be able to run for council. So I'm opposed to this. It shouldn't have even been discussed without it shouldn't have been handled by a phone vote. I didn't even know until I saw it on the agenda that it was going to be on the agenda tonight. And if Chuck Martin is true to his word, he won't take this to the legislative body, because it will not have a majority vote as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Councilman Hipes.
Well, that's the reason I love being on council, because we have passionate, heartfelt expressions of our opinions, and sometimes we line up and sometimes we have a disagreement. In 1858, I suspect there were a couple of hundred people here in Alpharetta. And we didn't grow very much from 1858 to 1980 because we had 3,000 people in 1980, but now we're a city, last census of 66,000, we're well over 70,000, 23 million square feet of office space. We are a business center. This is a sophisticated city. The job of governing the city is way different than it was even 20 years ago. And I think it's important that when the citizens have elected somebody to run the city and to govern this city, that a majority of the people who have elected them are representing them. I went to the easiest information I could find on my phone, which was the 2019 election results. In an off-year election in 2019, on average, there were 3,200 votes cast. Now, I believe that to be out of an eligible voting base of somewhere between 47 to 49,000 people. 32,000 people voted. Now, 5 people ran for an office, ran for my office, ran for Councilman Mitchell's office, ran for mayor. If 25% as a plurality were to win, then in this very complex city that we've grown to be, that sets very high standards for itself, we would have a quarter of 3,200 people or 800 voters determining who would sit in these seats, who would sit in the center seat. And I, for one, would like to see those persons who sit up here and make these decisions at least have a majority of the votes by the persons who cast votes for an election. I'm sensitive and do understand the cost of elections as much as anyone. And, I'll take your point. I'm not here to argue with you. You raised some valid points. But on the whole, I believe for this city, for where we are, where we want to be, where we will be, that I think it's very important that when we sit down and take our oath of office, that we have the backing of the majority of the people who took the time to cast their votes. And I'm going to add one thing further. Councilman Mitchell raised what he believes to be some perceived advantages to maybe certain candidates running for office in a majority vote. I mean, he says that, they'll go out and get this, that, or the other. I happen to believe the opposite is true. I happen to believe, as an incumbent, that plurality strongly favors the incumbent. I think if 5 people run for office, and I'm one of those 5 people running for my seat, and there's an I next to my name, that I'm going to get a substantial number of votes just by virtue of being the incumbent, whether people know me or not. And so I actually believe this works against those of us who are incumbents who are running for office and levels the playing field. So I respect the difference of opinion and our disagreement on this, but I do feel strongly for this change because I believe strongly in Alpharetta.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark.
I too have listened to both council members speak. Councilman Hypes hit on a few of the points that I was going to bring up here. But the longer I've been in office, I'm at the beginning of my 3rd term, so I'm term limited out in city council, so it doesn't really matter to me. I'm not running for city council again. The thought that it wouldn't take much to get 4 people in a race, and similar to John's math, 26% could be the winner, which says 74% of the people that voted that year did not vote for that person. And so the chances of getting somebody who's unqualified, that skins by, slides by, with a popular vote of 26%, just has never set well with me. The understanding that we couldn't have more debate, because in the situation of a runoff, you're forced to go and run another short-term election and explain to the people, possibly do another debate with just 2 people, as to getting the message and finally figuring out which one is the best candidate. As far as costs, I think I heard some mixed numbers. how much you raise or who contributes doesn't really affect the 51 or the other plurality. I think it's a separate issue when it comes to election campaigning and disclosure. But I will say, yes, it is a cost to the city, and I think this is an important item that we get right. As Councilman Heifs mentioned, this isn't Sleepy Town anymore. This isn't 1858. Just because we've done it all that way doesn't mean we've been doing it right. Yes, we've gotten by with it. It has served us. I don't know if it's served us well. As far as election costs, yes, there will be some runoffs, and that will cost the city. But we also have situations, as we had last year in November, where the election was canceled because the citizens looked around and said, you know what, the folks that are up there are doing a good job. I don't see a reason to try to run somebody out of their position, let them finish what they're doing. And we do have term limits. That's an important thing to keep remembering. This isn't a matter of prolonging somebody's ability to stay in office. It does not do that. I think it's important to get it right, and I think it's important that more than 26% of the voting population gets to pick somebody to sit up here in the event of a four-way race. I'm making those numbers up, but those are the situations we've looked at multiple times. So I'm very much in support of this. I did a lot of research. We are one of the few that still do it this way. Our surrounding cities that border us do not. And when I talked to them about their charters, that they felt that was important from the beginning, not all the cities, but just the newer two that I can talk to. I felt it was important that we got the right people to sit in the right seats at the right jobs. So for that reason, I definitely do support this.
Councilman Dorito.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, Donald, you made some really good points. And I'm open to having a workshop discussion on this. I think we have time to do that. I doubt this request to the local legislative delegation would be pushed through the legislature at the front end of the session anyway. So I'm open to having this discussion and have the public come and discuss it because we always have time to amend what the majority of council decides to do here. As far as the actual change, I'm in favor of it, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. I'm looking at it maybe a little bit differently from my colleagues because they've said a lot of things that I was thinking as well. We could have a situation in the city, and we had one when I was on council years ago, where we had an individual elected official that we literally had to remove from office. And what's scary about that is in the current majority type elections that we run in Alpharetta today, as Mayor Pro Tem just alluded to, if you have 3 or 4 people in a race, we could literally be opening the door to some, for lack of a better term, a radical candidate who has different interests than what the general public of Alpharetta would have, or even the business community who don't vote here, but they come here and bolster up our economy. And that's a scary thought because that could easily happen in many of the seats on this council. And so do I want to run a runoff election after going through a regular election cycle? Absolutely not. I think everybody else here would agree, but it's the right thing to do for the city of Alpharetta, the size that we are now and the growth that we're anticipating in the future, because we owe it to our citizenry and future residents of the city and to our business community to have the right thought leadership, running the city up here in concert with our department heads and all our professional employees to keep a level of not only decorum, but of the best interests of the city who we represent, that is the proper value system that we want to see continue in Alpharetta. And I just think that, the current voting framework that we get elected under today, could introduce or invite some of the worst leaders in the future in the city. And remember, those leaders, each of us up here, we get appointments to many of our boards. So that could carry on to our boards and affect negatively our boards if the wrong people get elected here. And I mean by the wrong people, most people who run for office have the best interests of the city in heart, so I don't want to suggest that. But it's just that one individual who wants to turn things upside down, or something happened in their life in the city that they have this vendetta against the city, and they're running for the wrong reasons. So I think the plurality voting process with potential runoffs, if you don't get that 50+1, is in the best interest of a growing, rapidly growing city such as Alpharetta. So I support this.
Any other discussion? So I feel very strongly that we need to do this. Quite frankly, I've always won 51% of the vote, at least. I've rarely had more money in my campaign than my opponents. And I just think it's undemocratic. We've been fortunate, I don't know, 170 years or however many years the organization has been using this strategy. But I mean, we have had people game the system. I remember within the last 20 years, there were 2 strong candidates running. And then late in the race, there was another candidate recruited from the same neighborhood as one of those candidates. And the winner did not receive 50% of the vote. The world has changed, and the city of Alpharetta has changed. To Councilman Hypes' point, our budget is $179 million this year. That's not chump change. That is not small town stuff. This is a complex organization, and we have a very savvy electorate. But in this world, the political chaos is just too much of a vulnerability to not require at least 50% plus 1 vote. It's happened in other communities. I think there was a community, Kennesaw or somewhere like that. They ended up with a mayor that got 18% of the vote. And if you don't think there aren't people in this community crazy enough to run 6 candidates and win with 14, 16, 18, you really aren't paying close attention to the political world right now. I just think it's not too much to ask to someone get 50% plus 1 vote. Hanging on to old times just because it hasn't bitten us in the rear end yet is not a strategy. That's a hope. And I think however we go about doing this, we need to change it, because I'm never running another election. I couldn't care less. I want to leave this organization in a place that's better than I found it. And this is a way to help secure that future, because I don't believe the people of this community are going to make a drastic mistake as long as they have an opportunity to choose someone with a majority of our voters. And that's the way I feel about it. So that being said, I'll call for a motion. That would be good. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
I do not have any, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak, now is your chance to do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Now, do I have a motion?
Yes, with the glasses, I will make that motion. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion tonight to approve the resolution supporting General Assembly local delegation to amend the city charter regarding elections to go from plurality to a system of 50+1.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Hypes. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchell.
No matter how big our city has grown, it's rare that we have an election where there's even 3 people who want to run for the office. And I think more often than not, people who would want to run, they don't have the fundraising capability to raise the funds that it costs now to run an election. send out all the flyers. You've got to have at least $40,000 or be able to raise at least $40,000 to run a race in our city. It's rare that you don't spend that amount. We rarely have I don't know that we've ever had, that I can recollect, 5 people run for a race, much less 3 people run for a race. It's generally 1 or 2, maybe 3. And generally, what I've noticed is the third one drops out before the election day. So plurality has always worked for us and would continue to work in the future. It's just why spend the taxpayer dollars on making us have runoff elections when folks either don't want to run or they choose not to run anyway for our city council. It's not like we're having to weed out the candidates that are running for office. It's just not there. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass 6-1. So that'll wrap up the new business portion of tonight's meeting. If there's anyone left from public comment, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any reports this evening? Councilman Will.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have 2 reports tonight. The first one is that we had our annual Shop with a Cop program out a few weeks ago. We had over 200 kids showed up at Target due to donations from corporate and individuals within the city. Each child got roughly $100 to spend at Target, which is super cool. So Shop with a Cop, 200 kids, $100 each. That was pretty awesome. The second report, and I wonder if many people on this council know this, but we are now running our own fire training facility to train new firefighters for the city of Alpharetta. We're actually running a police facility as well. We've completed our first class for police. This week we graduated our second class of firefighters in Alpharetta. And just to give you some context, we had over 60 applicants apply. 9 got selected and 7 graduated. So that just goes to tell you that we're picking the very best of the best of the best for this program. Let's see, was there anything else in there? Nope, I think that was it. So congratulations to the new fire recruits if you're watching. Good job. And that's it.
Thanks, sir. If there's no other reports, Councilman Hypes, there is another report.
I'll take a little bit of liberty here. This is our last meeting of the year, and we do from time to time have good substantive discussion and debate about the future of our city, and I do appreciate it. I think it makes us a better council when we do those things. But there's really one thing that all of us can agree on wholeheartedly, and that is Alpharetta is blessed with the best staff of any city around. And the leadership from Chris Lagerbloom through all the directors and all the employees is second to none. And as somebody who gets passionate and emotional about Alpharetta, the reason for that are the people who put in the work every day. And want to wish them happy holidays and Happy New Year.
That being said, I believe we have one more vote. I think we have a request for an executive session this evening.
We do, and the topics are real estate, litigation, I'll just list them all. Real estate, litigation, personnel, and we'll see what we get to. Thank you.
Motion to
recess to executive
session. I'm getting
Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Mitchell. We will take a vote. All those in favor of recessing into executive session, whether you want to or not, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. We'll be back shortly. God bless you all and hope you have a wonderful Christmas. Do we have a motion to reconvene?
Motion to reconvene.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Will. Any discussion? All those in favor of reconvening, please vote yes. And it is unanimous. Do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Councilman Dorito, second by Councilman Will. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, please vote yes. God bless you all and Merry Christmas. See you next year.